Hi guys, welcome back. Today we are going to learn to draw, interpret and transform trigonometric graphs. We've got 4 success criteria, and the first one is to find exact trigonometric values. So on your non-calculator paper, you can now be asked trigonometry questions. There are a few values that you need to be able to know or work out. And these are the values. So you need to know for sine, cos and tan, 0, 30, 45, 60 and 90. To start with, we're going to be able to work out the 45 degrees. So if we think about an isosceles triangle that has a right angle and the two sides are both 1 centimetre. That means the two missing angles would be 45 degrees. We can work out the length of the third side using Pythagoras' theorem. So that side must be root 2. Now if we just ignore one of the angles, that means root 2 is the hypotenuse. This side would be the opposite, and this side would be the adjacent. So if we wanted to work out sine 45 degrees, we do the opposite over the hypotenuse. So sine 45 is 1 over root 2. If we wanted to work out cos 45, that's the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So cos 45 is also 1 over root 2. And tan 45 would be the opposite over adjacent. So tan 45 is 1. Just so you also know, 1 over root 2 can also be written as root 2 over 2. So now we're going to work out 30 and 60. So if we think about an equilateral triangle with all the sides that are 2 centimeters. Because it's an equilateral triangle, all the angles must be 60 degrees. If we chop this triangle in half, we get this triangle. And the angle at the top must be 30 degrees because we've chopped that angle in half. We can work out the length of the missing side using Pythagoras' theorem. So the missing side is root 3. If we start by working out 30 degrees, so if we highlight that 30-degree angle, that means that 2 centimeters is the hypotenuse, 1 centimeter is the opposite, and root 3 is the adjacent. So sine 30 is opposite over hypotenuse. So sine 30 is 1/2. Cos 30 is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So cos 30 is root 3 over 2. And tan 30 is the opposite over the adjacent. So tan 30 is 1 over root 3, which can also be written as root 3 over 3. Now if we do the same thing, but for 60 degrees, so if we highlight the 60-degree angle, the 2 centimeters remains the hypotenuse, root 3 is the opposite, and 1 centimetre is the adjacent. So sine 60 is opposite over hypotenuse. So sine 60 is root 3 over 2. Cos 60 is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So cos 60 is 1/2. And tan 60 is the opposite over the adjacent. So tan 60 is root 3 over 1, or just root 3. So here are all the exact trig values that you need to be able to remember. There is a trick that you can use to help you remember them. So for sine, if you hold out your left hand, palm upwards, assign the following values to your fingers. Hold down a finger assigned to the angle you want. Count the number of fingers to the left of your finger that you've held down. The square root of this is the numerator, and if you divide it by 2. For cos, again, hold out your left hand, palm upwards. Assign the following values to your fingers. Hold down the finger assigned to the angle you want. Count the number of fingers to the right, this time, of the finger that you've held down, and square root this, and divide it by 2. For tan, again, hold out your left hand, palm downwards. Assign the following values to your fingers. Hold down the finger assigned to the angle that you want. Count the number of fingers to the left of the finger that you've got held down, and square root this as the numerator. And count the number of fingers to the right of the finger that you've got held down, and the square root of this is the denominator. So sine x is the square root of fingers on the left over 2. Cos x is the square root of fingers on the right over 2. And tan x is the square root of fingers on the left over the square root of fingers on the right. And now we've completed success criteria 1. So now we're going to move on to number 2, and this is to sketch trigonometric graphs. So you need to know how to sketch the 3 trigonometric graphs. It's important to remember the turning points and the intercepts of each graph. The graphs all repeat every 360 degrees. So this is the sine graph. It's important to note the turning points and where the graph intercepts the x-axis. This is the cos graph. Again, note the turning points. And also note where the graph crosses the x-axis. This is the tan graph. You'll see that there are some points that the tan graph never touches. These are known as asymptotes, and we denote these with dotted lines. And again, note where the graph crosses the x-axis. And now we've completed success criteria 2. So now we're going to move on to number 3, and this is to read values from a trigonometric graph. So for the sine graph is symmetrical about 90 degrees and 270 degrees. If we look at the line y equals a half, which is there, we can see it passes through sine 30 degrees and sine 150 degrees and sine 390 degrees. If we look at minus a half, which is there, we can see this passes through sine 210 degrees, sine 330 degrees, and sine minus 30 degrees. This is because sine x will always equal sine 180 minus x. This means that, for instance, sine 50 will always equal sine 130. So if sine 40 is 0.643, what is the value of sine 140? Well, if we look at where 140 degrees are and 40 degrees, and we know that the graph is symmetrical. So sine 140 will be exactly the same as sine 40. If we look at sine 20 degrees, and we know that's 0.342, what is the value of sine 200 degrees? Well, there's 200 and there's 20. If we have a look at where those are on the graph, you can see that sine 200 degrees will be the same as sine 20, but negative. Now for the cosine graph. The cosine graph is symmetrical about 0, 180 degrees and 360 degrees. If we look at the line y equals a half, it passes through these points: cos 60, cos 300, and cos 420. And if we look at the line y equals minus a half, we can see it passes through cos 120, cos 240, and cos 480. That means that cos x equals cos 360 minus x. So for example, cos 50 will be the same as cos 310. So if cos 20 equals 0.940, what is the value of cos 340? Well, if we have a look at those points on the graph, we can see that cos 340 will be exactly the same as cos 20. If cos 50 is 0.643, what is the value of cos 130? Again, if we have a look at those points on the graph, there's 50 and there's 130. We can see that cos 130 is exactly the same as cos 50, but negative. Now let's consider the graph of tan. So if we have a look at the line y equals 1, that passes through tan 45, tan 225, tan 405. And the line y equals minus 1, that passes through tan 135, tan 315, and tan minus 45. This means that tan x will equal tan x plus or minus 180 degrees. So for example, tan 50 will be the same as tan 230. So if tan 60 equals root 3, what is the value of tan 240? Well, if we have a look at these 2 points on the graph, 60 and 240, we can see that they'll be exactly the same. So tan 240 will also be root 3. If tan 50 equals 1.192, what is the value of tan 130? So if we have a look at these 2 points on the graph, there's 130 and there's 50. You can see that tan 130 will be exactly the same as tan 50, except it will be negative. Here are some questions for you to have a go at. Pause the video, and when you're ready to mark your work, press play. Here are your answers. So there's your green answers. There's your amber answers. And there's your red answers. And now we've completed success criteria 3. So now we're going to move on to number 4, and this is to transform trig graphs. So to be able to transform trig graphs, you need to be comfortable with transforming graphs in general. So if you don't feel confident with this, have a look at our video on transforming graphs. So the diagram shows the graph of y equals cos x, the values of x from 0 to 540. On the same grid, we want to sketch the graph of y equals 3 cos 2x, the values of x from 0 to 540. So for this, we divide all the x coordinates by 2, and we multiply all the y coordinates by 3. So there are our coordinates, and we need to divide each one by 2 and multiply the y coordinates by 3. So the new coordinates will be here. So our new graph looks like this. Here's a question for you to have a go at. Pause the video, and when you're ready to see what you should have done, press play. So this time, we want to sketch the graph of y equals 2 cos x plus 60. So we need to subtract 60 from the x values and multiply the y values by 2. So there are some coordinates. Our new coordinates would be here. So our graph looks like this. Here's another question for you to have a go at. Pause the video, and when you're ready to see what you should have done, press play. So this time, we want to sketch the graph of y equals sine x plus 60 minus 3. So we need to subtract 60 from the x values and subtract 3 from the y values. So our new coordinates will be here. So our new graph looks like this. And now we've completed success criteria 4. So now we've completed the last objective, it's time to end the video. Hope you enjoyed it and hope you found it useful. Make sure to like and subscribe, and be sure to check out the other videos on the rest of the channel. I'll see you next time. See ya.